Behind the scene with David Bedein, the coronavirus continues to be the subject of the nation here in Israel, as it is all over the world. We're all in isolation, and the question is how we can help one another. In a nation of 9 million people, with almost 1 million people out of work, perhaps temporarily, perhaps not, the concern that a good portion of the population will fall into poverty is on everyone's mind. One of the particular issues that's on the mind of people in Israel is how to make sure that the Arab population, which constitutes 20% of Israel, and the Arab population who are not Israeli citizens, who live in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, are taken care of. Israel has launched about 20 programs of aid to the Arabs who are not Israeli citizens, but can still get aid. And Israel has arranged for the World Bank, the Arab country of Qatar, and the Muslim country of Turkey to come in and help the Palestinians in every possible way. Now, what's very important to know, and this is something we've studied at our agency. I run the Israel Resource News Agency and the Center for Near East Policy Research here in Jerusalem. We've been studying and our staffers know Arabic on the PhD level, and we've been monitoring and listening very, very carefully to the Arabic radio broadcasts, Arabic television, Arabic newspapers. And whereas Israel is launching this admirable campaign, and this is not just altruism, but it's in Israel's interest that the Arab population shouldn't suffer so as not to give a reason for rioting. Israel has developed all these programs of aid. The Palestine Broadcast Corporation, which, by the way, operates on Israeli frequencies, which is one of the ironic issues. The Palestine Broadcast Corporation, which has been operating since 1995, and that's a good amount of time, 25 years, and they run a respectable radio program, radio network, television network, internet sites. It's all on the web now. They have been conducting a campaign to say that Israel is spreading the corona disease. Again, that Israel is spreading the coronavirus disease and throughout the Arab areas, and actually claiming. Now, this is something which calls back to an old traditional anti-Semitic virulent theme, that Israel used the matzahs, the unleavened bread that Jews eat during Passover, to spread the disease of coronavirus amongst the Palestinian Arabs. How did that happen? Well, it happens that the matzah factories in Jerusalem were actually employed several hundred Arab workers who live in Judea, Samaria, also known as the West Bank. And what has been prominent in the Palestinian Authority radio, TV, and internet sites is that Israel made sure that when the Arabs would leave, that they would infect and contaminate the matzahs and bring them home with them to their villages in order to contaminate their families. Now, it hasn't been reflected in thousands of people falling towards the coronaviruses. However, the fear that this is going to happen, that there will be an infectious disease that will be spread, is something that they've been doing. As a matter of fact, there was a Israeli army raid on a terrorist cell in Ramallah, which is located in just north of Jerusalem, and where some suspects of terror activities were arrested. Well, the Palestinian Authority police went in there and disinfected the place as if Israel had brought a trail of coronavirus disease with them. And every single day, it's been pumped into the Palestinian Authority population as if this is something that's about to happen. And it's not working completely with what they expected would happen. Now, again, Israel pouring money into Gaza, where they have 2 million people, with 75% of whom live in refugee camps, with the expectation that because of the dense population there, the disease, the coronavirus disease, would break out. And 3 days ago, there was a special interview with the head of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency in Gaza, in which he was asked in a live interview, well, how many people are suffering? He said 13. 13 people. Not 50, not 15, but 13, exactly. So that you don't really, it doesn't fit the reality, but you don't have to fit reality when you're trying to spread, not only, in this case, not a disease, but a rumor that has lethal consequences. What our agency has been covering over the last several years, actually for 20 years, has been the new Palestinian Authority school system, where school books actually accuse the school books that the children learn accuse Israel of spreading disease, of spreading illnesses of every kind, and they have been using the school books to basically train the children to conquer Israel in every possible way. In other words, they call it the right of return by force of arms is the theme of these books. Now, what's ironic is that these school books are marketed to the Palestinian Arab community through the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Now, the UN, it's called UNRWA. It's supposed to be a model. Anything with the UN is supposed to be a model of peace, tolerance, education, coexistence. Actually, UNRWA is doing exactly the opposite. And as a matter of fact, we're producing a film which will be ready very, very shortly on where children are sing songs of exterminating the Jews. You can see our films, by the way, that we produced on our website, israelbehindthenews.com. So again, this is the intro, the contradiction of reality, of Israel doing everything possible with the Israel Security Cabinet and every level of Israeli medicine doing what it can to neutralize any possibility of the spread of the coronavirus disease in both the Israeli Arab population and the Palestinian Arab population. And instead of thanks, Israel being kicked in the face and saying, we know that you're spreading disease. So this is very important. Now, another issue which is on the agenda for the new government is whether Israel will formally annex areas of Judea Samaria, also known as the West Bank. And the assumption is that has been widely promoted, Israel's doing that for ideological reasons. Well, there's another reason which people have to understand. Not far from where we live, just south of Jerusalem, there's an Arab community known as Beit Jala. Actually, it's a Christian community. But the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, introduced troops there, and in order to fire on Gilo, and which is in the southernmost neighborhood of Jerusalem. And we actually know two people who were killed by snipers. And the shooting became so bad that to venture into southern Jerusalem you were taking your life in your hands. So back in April 2002, the Israeli army moved into Beit Jala and has never left, and has essentially annexed the area in order to make sure that there would be no more attacks on southern Jerusalem. It's that simple. Now you're going to be reading a lot in the media about the interest that Israel has of annexing the Jordan Valley. Now, the Jordan River Valley is seemingly very distant. Most Israelis have never been there unless they were there as part of their military training or military service. Is an area from which you can fire missiles straight into all of Israel's coastal plain, which is where most of the Israeli population lives. And nothing if it's in control of a foreign army or a foreign entity, there's nothing Israel can do to stop that from happening, which is why formal annexation is on the agenda in the next government. Now, there's been a torrent of opposition to this. There's an organization in Washington known as J Street, which is fighting the issue of annexation as if it would create an apartheid regime, which has nothing to do with reality, because the reality is, as I mentioned, as in the Gilo Beit Jala instance, here we have another issue, which is not ideology or morality, but the basic issues of self-defense and protection. That's very, very important. Now, Mohammed Abbas, who is the titular head of the Palestinian Authority and the Palestine Liberation Organization, has threatened Israel that he will tear up peace agreements in case that happens. Well, those peace agreements were made, you may know, on the White House lawn on September 13th, 1993, after a long negotiation in Oslo, Norway. Now, most people do not know, and if they do know, they've forgotten that the Palestine Liberation Organization, while they signed a deal on the White House lawn in the presence of the President of the United States, who was then Clinton, and the President of Russia, and witnessed by the whole world, but it was never ratified. It was ratified by the Israel Knesset Parliament on a vote of 61 to 50, but when the Palestine Liberation Organization Executive Council got together to approve the Oslo Accord and the peace agreement on October 6th, 1993, it was never approved. So there is no Oslo Accord. There is no Oslo Agreement. Now, most people, when they hear that, they would think that yours truly should be in a mental health asylum, or perhaps I had some delusions over my Sabbath wine or something like that. But that's the case. If you look under on our website, a writer by the name of Pinchas Inbari, who was a left-wing writer writing for the Al Hamishmar newspaper at the time, he was there. He was there in Tunis when he was waiting outside of Arafat's office, waiting for the conference room to announce that the PLO had ratified the agreement. And Arafat came out and said, "I can't find a quorum. We can't ratify the agreement." So therefore, the agreement has never been ratified. So if Abbas, you're going to see something very dramatic on the air very soon, of Abbas tearing up the agreement, there is no Oslo Accord. So there's no downside, in a sense, which is very, 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 very important. Now, Muhammad Abbas, also known as Abu Mazen, he's trained in the art of disinformation. He went to a institute known as the Patricia Lumumba Institute of Moscow University, which trained people to basically carry out disinformation and misinformation, and how to communicate a number of messages at once and get away with it. The Patricia Lumumba Institute trained people from Cuba, from Algeria, from Vietnam, and of course from the Palestine Liberation Organization, so that you can get away with having a terrorist organization at the same time, and a terrorist organization which does not take a peace agreement seriously, but you can convince the world that there's a peace agreement. Now, I was hopeful. I've been in Israel for 50 years, and I've worked as a social worker and as an investigative journalist. And I was kind of hopeful at the beginning of the Oslo process, because my father, may he rest in peace, his best friend had been in Nairobi, in Kenya, when Jomo Kenyatta, who had been called a terrorist, came into power. But when he came into power, he was no longer a terrorist. The leopard changed his spots. Whereas Yasser Arafat, that did not happen. And the reason why we were able to get a hold of the school books was I was able to interview Yasser Arafat in 1996 and ask him about when he was going to say peace in the Arabic language, which he rarely did. And he said, "Don't worry, our new school books will reflect an atmosphere of peace." Well, I took him up on his deal. And when the school books became ready, a few years later, I reminded Arafat of his offer, and he was true to his word, and he made sure that we were able to get a hold of the Palestinian Arab school books, and we've got all 365 school books issued by the Palestinian Authority for their people. Well, you will see them translated and examined on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. 365 school books, not one school book for peace. Now, the former Israel Foreign Minister and Prime Minister, one of the architects of the Oslo Accords, Shimon Peres, told me personally and said publicly that there was a peace curriculum of the Palestinian Authority, and it was created by Berzeit University, a Palestinian university. So I went there, and they gave me a message. We have good news and bad news. The good news is that we created a peace curriculum. The bad news is that it's been vetoed by the Palestinian Authority. I want to say something to those who are watching this program. I would be a very, very popular journalist and popular person. Maybe I would get something of a Nobel Peace Award if I showed a Palestinian curriculum that was advocating peace. Except it doesn't exist. Even if I showed one school book which advocates peace. Now, I have here one of the Palestinian school books with me, and one of the new Palestinian school books with me. And what it features, just want to show you what it features. This is a woman named Dalal al-Mughrabi, and this was published 6 months ago. Dalal al-Mughrabi, you'll see she's wearing a kind of an army uniform, a tough uniform, and what follows is 4 pages of how people have to be like her. The children have to learn how to be like her as a role model. And we had this translated. It's on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. And Dalal al-Mughrabi is the woman who commandeered a bus, an Israeli bus on on the Tel Aviv coastal road, and murdered 38 people, 13 of them being children. Now she's presented as a role model. I want to say something that my colleague Professor Robert Wistrich, who passed away a few years ago, he took a look at the Palestinian curriculum. He was an expert on Nazi curriculum. I said, well, this must be like the Nazis. He said, the Nazis never did that. The Germans, yes, they did demonize the Jews and make them into look like insects and monsters, but there was never ever a call in the Nazi school books to kill Jews or to present models of murderers as the people that they should be, that children should grow up to be like. So in a sense, it's a step beyond the Nazis in terms of what we have. However, the ability of the Palestine Liberation Organization to present a false front using top-notch PR people, public relations people around the world. They're recognized by 74 nations around the world, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and defined by many, many people as none other than a peace partner to Israel. Most people don't know that they're a peace partner to Israel, and as a matter of fact, there's not one university that allows, in the United States, that allows the Palestinian Authority school system to be presented just as evidence, because it's done. The school system in the United States, the university system, is dominated by the Saudi Arabia, which is the prime supporter of the Palestine Liberation Organization, even though they have put up a very nice front like the PLO does. But the reality, don't confuse facts with reality. It's very, very different. So very important. So again, when you see Abu Mazen, aka Mahmoud Abbas, tear up the peace agreement from 1993, well, he never signed it, so it really doesn't mean anything if he does. Now, I want to move on to another issue, which is current, and that's the issue of the isolation and the spreading of the plague. Now, I mentioned earlier in this program that the PLO is spreading the idea that the coronavirus is being spread by the Jews. Well, there's a context to that. Over the centuries, many pogroms, many anti-Semitic pogroms have been caused because of rumors that Jews are spreading disease or murdering children, whatever. And what better pretext for a future pogrom or future series of pogroms around the world with a sudden economic decline, with many people becoming poor, and many people falling off the charts, and many people dying from the corona disease because they don't, amongst other things, they don't take care of their cleanliness. And we learn as when we learn history, we learn that the 1348, the Black Plague in 1348 was very much blamed on the Jews, because while the plague was all over the place, many people simply did not keep themselves clean, whereas within the Torah, Israel's also known as the Old Testament, one of the most important aspects of Judaism is to always wash yourself, and also in not only with food, but also with sexuality, always to keep yourself clean, to keep yourself cleansed, to in a sense to spread and disinfectants at all times. And that's one of the things that saves Jews' lives. And I see from my visits to Sweden that Sweden is not taking the precautions that we're taking in Israel. Now, Sweden has the same population in Israel, 9 million people. Why is it that Sweden has close to 1,800 people who have been killed by the coronavirus disease? In Israel, about 10% of that, 180. It's quite a difference. Well, in Israel, I'm right now sitting on my porch, but as soon as I got out of this porch, I put on a mask, and we maintain a 2-meter distance between anyone. And there are no more coffee shops, no film, no movie theaters, no sports events, nothing. We understand that life is going on as usual in Sweden, and I don't want to be arrogant, but the Jewish respect for life is what keeps us going. And of course, the Nazis and their 21 nations that worked with the Nazis in World War II recognized that and understood that there had to be a, how should I say, a reduction of Jewish population by force. Who knows how many people would have been created, would have been come out of the Jewish population of 18 million in 1939 had there not been a murder of 6 million. I want to conclude this program today with a call for people to pay attention to what's going on with children. You'll see on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, a request to hear what children are saying right now. People aren't paying attention to what's happening with children, with their imagination, with their dreams, with their fears. And we're putting together a book called A Child in Isolation. We're asking people to ask their children of all ages to write what they're going through, to write about themselves, to indicate how they're coping with the current crisis. This is going to go on for several months, perhaps, and the isolation that children feel, and certainly not in school. Not in school. Many schools have been shut down, and they may be wondering what's going on. And as they see people dying around them, and that's something that no one's prepared to deal with. No one prepares children for the tragedy of death around them. They don't quite understand it because people look the same. People seem to be in the same middle class situation. But 3 months hence, when salaries haven't come in and more people are going to be economically stressed and there may be more violence at home, etc., children are wondering what's going on. So this is something that you can see our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Write to us. Tell us what your children are thinking. I sent out a memo in France, in Germany, in Sweden, of course in Israel and in the United States, to find out more about what people are thinking. So let's pay attention to the kids, even though children don't seem to be as affected physically and lethally by the coronavirus, but something's going on in their heads. And full disclosure, besides being a journalist, I am a social work professional, and this is part of my training. This is Behind the Scenes with David Bedein. Thank you.